Whenever we dig into history, especially the history of revolutions and nation building, it's usually a pretty binary affair. You have your clear-cut heroes and your absolute villains.
That is the general rule, yes.
Yeah.
History is written by the victors, and, the losers are usually painted as these terrible figures to justify whatever came next.
Right, and who depends entirely on which side of a border or which side of an ideological wall you happen to be standing on.
It's very rare to find nuance in the foundational myths of a nation.
Exactly. But today, we are unpacking a massive, glaring exception to that rule. We're talking about a figure who manages to be the ultimate hero for two governments that have been, technically at war for over 70 years.
It's a fascinating paradox, really a unique case study in political legacy. We are talking, of course, about Sun Yat-sen.
Sun Yat-sen, the man whose face is on the money in Taiwan, and whose massive portrait gets parked right in the middle of Tiananmen Square in Beijing on major holidays.
It's an incredible status. In the Republic of China, which we all know as Taiwan, he's officially designated as the father of the nation.
He's their George Washington.
He is. Meanwhile, across the strait in the People's Republic of China on the mainland, he's revered as the forerunner of the revolution.
Father versus forerunner. I like that. It's a subtle distinction, but it lets both sides claim him. Essentially, everyone agrees he's the guy who turned the lights on for modern China.
He's a pivotal figure who ended thousands of years of imperial rule. But here's the thing that really stood out to me when I was going through the research for this deep dive.
What's that?
If you look at the raw data of his life, his actual track record as a leader, as a general, it's not exactly a resume of constant winning.
That's what jumped out at me, too. This guy spent way more time losing, hiding, running away, and begging for money than he ever spent actually ruling anything.
He was, in many ways, a professional exile. He spent arguably more time outside of China than inside it during his most active years.
A professional exile. I love that. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how this guy, this doctor, this failed insurrectionist, this fundraiser, managed to become the one thing that holds the fractured identity of modern China together.
We need to look at the man behind the statues. Not just the bronze hero, but the guy who was constantly on the move, constantly failing, and yet somehow never stopped.
And we have to start by acknowledging he wasn't a traditional Chinese rebel. He wasn't a peasant leading a revolt with pitchforks.
No, nor was he a disgruntled general. He was a product of a collision between worlds, really.
Right. Let's go back to the beginning. Because when I think of the father of modern China, I picture, a scholar in robes, studying Confucius in some misty mountain temple.
And you'd be completely wrong. Sun was born in 1866 in Qing, a small village in Guangdong province. His background was humble. His father was a tailor, a porter, a farmer. This wasn't the elite scholar official class.
So he wasn't part of the system he was about to destroy.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But the real plot twist, the thing that changes everything, happens when he's a teenager. Because at age 13, he doesn't go to Beijing to study for the imperial exams.
He goes to Honolulu, Hawaii.
This is the pivotal moment. You have to understand, in the late 19th century, southern China was impoverished. Lots of people were leaving to find work abroad. Sun's elder brother, Sun Mei, had moved to Hawaii and had done quite well for himself.
He was a rancher, right?
A rancher and a merchant, yes. So Sun Yat-sen packs his bags and moves to live with his wealthy brother.
I just can't imagine that culture shock. It's 1879. You have a teenage boy from a Chinese village where tradition is everything, suddenly dropped into Honolulu. He enrolls at the Iolani School.
And the curriculum there is absolutely vital to understanding who he becomes. He's studying English, British history, mathematics, Christianity. He's reading about the Magna Carta, the American Revolution, the rule of law.
It's a complete software update for his brain.
Exactly. He arrived unable to speak a word of English, but he was incredibly bright. By the time he graduated in 1882, he won a prize for academic achievement from King Kalakaua himself.
Wow. But it's not just about learning the language, is it? It's about the heroes he starts to adopt.
Yes. He began to admire figures like Abraham Lincoln and Alexander Hamilton. He saw the structure of Western democracy, the concepts of republicanism, and he started to contrast that with the decaying, corrupt Qing dynasty back home.
He realized that the way things were in China wasn't the only way things could be.
Precisely. So Hawaii is the incubator. It's where he gets the perspective that makes him totally incompatible with the old system.
Incompatible is the perfect word. And that incompatibility showed itself pretty violently the moment he went back home.
Yes, the idol smashing incident.
This sounds like something out of a rebellious teen movie.
It really does. He returns to his village at age 17, filled with these new ideas about modernization and science. He looks around and sees his neighbors pouring their money and hope into worshiping wooden statues in the local temple.
And to him, this isn't just culture anymore. It's a superstition holding them back.
It's the chain. So he goes to the Beiji Temple with his childhood friend, Lu Hadong, and I remember that name, he's important later. Yeah. They walk up to the statue of the North Star God.
And he decides to prove a point.
He wants to prove that the superstition is powerless. So he climbs up and physically breaks the finger off the idol. Some accounts say he did more damage, but the symbolic act was breaking that finger. He was basically saying, look, I hurt your God and he didn't strike me down. He has no power.
I can't imagine that went over well with the villagers.
Furious would be an understatement. It was a massive scandal. You have to remember, this wasn't just vandalism. It was sacrilege. To avoid their wrath, Sun's parents basically had to banish him.
They kicked him out.
They sent him away to Hong Kong to cool off.
So his first act of rebellion gets him kicked out of his hometown. But this actually works out for him because it sets him on the path to becoming a doctor.
It does. He continued his education in Hong Kong, eventually attending the Hong Kong College of Medicine for Chinese. And he was a brilliant student. He was one of only 2 graduates in his class in 1892.
So he's Dr. Sun now. He could have had a comfortable life. He could have been a wealthy, respected doctor.
He certainly could have. But while he's studying anatomy and surgery, he's also diagnosing China's political illness. He fell in with a group of friends, young Hockling, Chan Subak, and Ya Lit.
And they gave themselves a nickname that is just fantastic.
The 4 Bandits.
The 4 Bandits.
In the eyes of the Qing authorities, they were dangerous. They weren't robbing trains. They were meeting in tea houses to discuss revolutionary theory, talking about overthrowing the Qing dynasty.
But talk is cheap. When does the doctor become the revolutionary? When does he decide, okay, I'm putting down the scalpel and picking up the sword, so to speak?
The tipping point came in 1894. And interestingly, Sun didn't jump straight to revolution. He tried one last time to be a reformer.
The petition.
Yes. He wrote an 8,000-character petition to Li Hongzhang. Now, Li Hongzhang was a heavy hitter, a powerful viceroy, one of the most influential officials in the Qing court.
And what was in the petition? Was it radical?
Not at all. It was incredibly rational. It was a blueprint for modernizing China. He proposed investing in education, modernizing agriculture, building industry. It wasn't a call for democracy. It was a call for competence.
A very sensible proposal.
Which was completely ignored. He traveled all the way to Tianjin to deliver it, and he was refused an audience. He never even got in the room.
And that's the moment, right? The door slams shut, so he decides to burn down the house.
That's a good way to put it. He realized that the Qing system was too ossified to change from within. It had to be removed. So he traveled back to Hawaii and founded the Revived China Society.
Okay, so now he's an organizer. But an organization needs a win. It needs action.
And action came in 1895 with the first Guangzhou uprising. The plan was to capture the city of Guangzhou, which would have given them a major base of operations.
Planned being the operative word.
Unfortunately, yes. This sets a pattern for Sun's early career. The plans were leaked. The Qing government, which had spies everywhere, cracked down immediately. Over 70 members were captured.
And this wasn't just a slap on the wrist. This was the Qing dynasty.
It was brutal. Sun's childhood friend, Lu Hadong, the one who helped him smash the idol, was captured. He was executed. He's often called the first martyr of the revolution.
Wow. That had to weigh on him. Your best friend is dead. Your plan is in ruins.
And Sun himself was a wanted man with a price on his head. He had to flee into exile. And this brings us to the financial cost. Revolutions are expensive. His brother, Sun Mei, the wealthy rancher in Hawaii,
The one who took him in?
he had to sell 12,000 acres of ranch land to support Sun's activities and to hide the families of the revolutionaries.
12,000 acres. He basically liquidated his entire fortune for his brother's dream.
The family was all in. But Sun doesn't just stay in Hawaii. He goes to London. And this is where the story turns into a legitimate spy thriller.
The Kidnapped in London incident of 1896. This is the event that made Sun Yat-sen a household name, isn't it?
It is. So picture this. October 1896. Sun is in London, but the Qing government has a long reach. Their secret service is tracking him.
And he's just walking down the street.
On Sunday, October 11th, he was walking past the Chinese legation, the embassy in Portland Place. He was engaged in conversation by some Chinese men and lured or, dragged into the building. Once he was inside, the doors locked. He was on Chinese sovereign territory.
He's a prisoner. What was their plan? They can't just execute him in downtown London.
No, that would cause a huge diplomatic incident. Their plan was to smuggle him out to the docks, put him on a boat chartered specifically for this, ship him back to China, and execute him there.
Which would have been a horrible death.
Almost certainly Ling Chi death by 1,000 cuts, or a ritual beheading.
That is terrifying. Locked in a room in London, just waiting to be shipped back to be tortured to death. How on earth did he get out?
He tried throwing notes out the window, but they fell on a roof. Finally, he managed to befriend an English servant working at the legation. He convinced this man to smuggle a message out to his former medical teacher, Dr. James Cantley.
The old professor to the rescue.
Dr. Cantley didn't hesitate. He went to Scotland Yard, who said they couldn't really do much, so he went to the press.
He leaked it.
He blew it wide open. The Globe, the Times, they ran these sensational stories about a Chinese revolutionary kidnapped on British soil, British justice violated. It became a massive scandal.
So public pressure mounted.
Crowds gathered outside the legation. The British Foreign Office pressured the Chinese diplomats, and after 12 days of captivity, Sun was released.
Talk about a backfire. The Qing government tried to silence him, and instead they made him a global celebrity.
Exactly. He walked out of that legation a star. He wrote a book about it, Kidnapped in London, which became a bestseller. Suddenly, he wasn't just a failed rebel from Guangdong. He was the face of the Chinese resistance to the West.
So he's famous now, but he's still in exile. He can't go back to China. So what does a revolutionary do when he can't be in the country he's trying to revolutionize?
He hustles. This next phase of his life is all about fundraising, building alliances, and navigating international bureaucracy. And he was incredibly creative with the truth when he needed to be.
Speaking of being creative with the truth, let's talk about the Hawaii birth certificate. This detail blew my mind.
Ah, yes. This is a masterclass in pragmatic maneuvering. You have to remember, this is the early 1900s. The U.S. had the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 in full swing.
Which made it almost impossible for Chinese nationals to enter the United States.
Right. And that's a huge problem if you want to tour the U.S. raising money from wealthy Chinese-American communities. So in 1904, Sun obtained a certificate of Hawaiian birth. He essentially claimed he was born in Hawaii in 1870.
Wait, he lied to the U.S. government? He claimed he was a natural-born U.S. citizen.
He did, and despite some initial pushback, the U.S. government accepted it on appeal. This granted him U.S. nationality and a U.S. passport. It allowed him to travel freely across the states to raise funds.
That is ironic on so many levels. The father of modern China was technically, for a while, a U.S. citizen based on a complete fabrication.
It speaks to his by any means necessary approach. He viewed these laws as obstacles to be circumvented for the greater good, and that pragmatism extended to his alliances, particularly with Japan.
Right, because he spent a lot of time in Japan during these exile years, and this is a very sensitive topic, isn't it, given what happened later?
It's very complicated. Japan was Sun's primary base of operations for years. He was supported by Japanese Pan-Asianists. These were people who believed that Asia should throw off Western imperialism. They saw a strong, modern China as a necessary partner for Japan.
Asia for the Asians, essentially.
Right. But there was another side to it. Some Japanese supporters wanted a revolution in China because they thought it would create chaos, allowing Japan to expand its influence. But Sun took their money and their protection. He had to.
There's a story about a supporter who built him a safe house.
Yes, a wealthy businessman named Fusanosuke Kuhara. He built a villa for Sun called the Orchid Room. It actually had a secret escape tunnel hidden behind a fireplace.
You're kidding me, a secret tunnel.
A secret tunnel. Sun could slip out if the Qing assassins came knocking.
It really is like a movie. Secret tunnels, fake passports. But while he's running through tunnels, he also has a very, let's call it complex personal life.
That is a fair description. He had an arranged marriage to his first wife, Lu Muzhen, back in the village, a traditional woman, but he also had a concubine, Chen Kuai-fen, who lived with him in Malaysia.
And then there were the Japanese partners.
Yes, Haru Asada and Kaoru Atsuki. He actually married Atsuki while she was just a teenager, then had to leave her. But the marriage that really caused a political earthquake, the iconic one, was to Sun Qingling.
This is where it gets dramatic. Because Sun Qingling wasn't just some random woman.
Not at all. She was the daughter of Charles Soong. Now, Charles Soong was one of Sun's closest friends and arguably his biggest financial backer.
So Sun goes to his best friend and main fundraiser and says, hey, I want to marry your daughter.
And the daughter, Qingling, was 26 years younger than Sun. Plus, Sun was still legally married to his first wife. And the Soongs were devout Christians.
I can see why Charles might be upset.
Upset doesn't cover it. He was furious. He felt betrayed. He locked his daughter up. He tried everything to break up the match. But Sun and Qing were both incredibly stubborn. They fled to Japan and got married in 1915.
This marriage created a power couple that would shape Chinese politics for decades. She became Madame Sun Yat-sen.
Exactly. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We have the fundraiser, the exile, the lover. We still need a revolution that actually works.
Right. How do we get from guy hiding in a villa in Japan to president?
We have to talk about the Tongminghui.
The Tongminghui. This is the United League.
Yes. Up until 1905, the Chinese resistance was fragmented. You had student groups, secret societies, radicals, moderates. They couldn't agree on anything. In 1905, in Tokyo, Sun managed to do something very difficult. He herded the cats.
He brought them all under one umbrella.
He united them under a specific mantra. Expel the Tatar barbarians, revive Zhonghua, establish a republic, distribute land equally.
Tatar barbarian is pretty harsh. He's referring to the Manchu rulers of the Qing Dynasty.
It was ethnic nationalism. He was tapping into the resentment of the Han Chinese majority against the Manchu minority ruling class. But he combined that with Republican idealism.
But even with this united front, they kept failing, didn't they? They launched uprising after uprising.
Over and over again. The Huisu uprising, the Zhenangguan uprising. Between 1895 and 1911, there were 10 major failed uprisings. 10.
It must have been incredibly demoralizing.
It was. But Sun had this almost supernatural persistence. He just kept moving, kept raising money, kept talking. And then finally came October 10th, 1911, the Wuchang uprising.
This is the big one. The Xinhai Revolution. The one that finally topples the empire. And here's the best part. The detail that I think defines his life. Sun Yat-sen wasn't even there.
It is one of history's great ironies. The father of the revolution was in Denver, Colorado.
Denver? What was he doing in Denver?
He was on a fundraising tour. He was staying at the Brown Palace Hotel. And he found out that the revolution had finally succeeded by reading about it in a newspaper the next morning.
Imagine that scene. You've been trying to start a fire for 20 years. You're grabbing coffee in Denver. You open the paper and you see, oh, look, the fire started without me.
And significantly, he didn't rush back immediately. A military commander would have jumped on the first boat. But Sun knew his strengths. He knew that a military victory wasn't enough. The revolution would die without money and diplomatic recognition.
So he took the long way home.
He did. He went to London and Paris first. He lobbied the British and French governments to stop loaning money to the Qing Dynasty. He was cutting off the empire's financial lifeline. He didn't arrive back in China until December.
But when he gets back, he is the man of the hour.
He is. The revolutionaries needed a figurehead everyone could agree on. On January 1st, 1912, Sun Yat-sen is inaugurated as the provisional president of the Republic of China in Nanjing. The dynasty is over. The republic has begun.
Mission accomplished. Roll credits.
If only. This is where the tragedy of Sun's political career really begins, because being a revolutionary is very, very different from being a president.
What was the main hurdle? Why couldn't he just govern?
The problem was the army, or, well, the lack of one. The provisional government in Nanjing had high ideals and a new flag, but they had no real military power and no money. The north of China was controlled by Yuan Shikai.
Yuan Shikai, the powerful Qing general.
He was the commander of the Beiyang army, the most modern and powerful military force in China. He was a shrewd, ambitious operator.
So you have Sun with the ideals and Yuan with the guns.
Exactly. And Sun knew that if they fought, it would be a bloody civil war that the infant republic would likely lose. So Sun made a deal, a heartbreaking deal.
What was the trade?
He agreed to step down. He would resign as president and let Yuan Shikai take the job. In exchange, Yuan had to force the Qing emperor to abdicate peacefully and agree to support the republic.
That is a massive sacrifice. He basically handed the keys to the kingdom to the guy with the biggest army just to save the concept of the republic.
It was an act of supreme idealism. He believed that institutions were more important than individuals. He thought Yuan Shikai would play by the rules.
And he did not play by the rule.
He did not. Once Yuan had the presidency, he consolidated power. He assassinated rivals, specifically Song Jiaoren, a key KMT leader. And eventually, Yuan Shikai went fully off the rails and tried to declare himself emperor.
So the republic was dead, and Sun is back on the run.
Back on the run. He launched a second revolution in 1913 against Yuan, but it failed miserably. He fled to Japan. Again.
This poor guy. He finally wins, gives it up for the greater good, gets betrayed, and ends up back in exile.
And things got even worse. After Yuan Shikai died in 1916, China didn't go back to being a republic. It shattered. This was the beginning of the warlord era.
Describe that for us. What was that like?
Imagine the country broken into pieces. Local generals turned provinces into their own private kingdoms. They taxed the peasants into starvation to fund their private armies. Wars were constant. There was no central government, just chaos.
It sounds like Mad Max.
It was. Sun tried to establish rival governments in Guangzhou in the south to oppose the warlords in the north. But he was constantly struggling. A warlord would ally with him, then betray him. He needed powerful friends.
And this is where the story pivots toward the Soviet Union. Because he tried the West again first, right?
He did. He appealed to the United States and Britain for aid. He wrote to them saying, "Help me develop China. Help me build a democracy."
And what did the West say?
They ghosted him. The Western powers preferred stability, even if it meant dealing with corrupt warlords, over supporting a perpetual revolutionary like Sun. They ignored him.
So if the capitalists won't help.
You turn to the communists. The newly formed Soviet Union was more than happy to help. In 1923, Sun signed the Sun Yat-sen Manifesto.
Now, this is crucial because this explains why the Communist Party in China today claims him. But was Sun actually a communist?
No, he was very clear about that.
Yeah.
He explicitly stated in the manifesto that he didn't think the Soviet system was suitable for China. He wasn't a Marxist, but he was a pragmatist. He needed their organizational structure, their training, and their weapons.
So what was the deal? What was the arrangement?
He agreed to a united front. He allowed members of the newly formed Chinese Communist Party to join his Nationalist Party, the KMT, as individuals. He thought he could use them and control them.
A marriage of convenience.
Exactly. The Soviets sent advisors. The most famous was a man named Mikhail Borodin. Sun actually called Borodin his Lafayette, referencing the French general who helped George Washington.
That's a telling comparison. He sees himself as Washington and the Russian Bolshevik as just a means to an end.
And with Soviet money and arms, they founded the Whampoa Military Academy. This is hugely significant for modern Chinese history.
Why is Whampoa so important?
Because it built the army that would eventually conquer the warlords. But look at the staff list. It's a who's who of the future Civil War. The commandant was Chiang Kai-shek, Sun's conservative protege, the head of the political department. Zhu Enlai, the future premier of communist China.
They were all under the same roof. The future bitter enemies were colleagues.
They were working together under Sun's umbrella. That is the power of Sun Yat-sen. He was the only figure with enough gravity to hold these contradictory forces together. He was the glue.
Let's talk about his philosophy then. The three principles of the people. We hear this term a lot, Sanminzu Yi, but what does it actually mean?
It's his political legacy. The three principles are nationalism, democracy, and livelihood.
Okay, let's break those down. First, nationalism.
Minzu. This wasn't just simple patriotism. It was about independence, freedom from imperialist domination, getting the Western powers and Japan out of China. It was about China standing up as an equal nation state.
Second, democracy.
Minquan. He wanted a constitutional government. But, and this is interesting, he has his own unique spin on it. He proposed a 5-power constitution.
5 powers. In the U.S., we have 3. Legislative, executive, judicial. What were the other 2?
He added the examination yuan and the control yuan.
Explain those.
The examination yuan was based on the ancient Chinese civil service exams. Sun believed that leaders and bureaucrats should be qualified, not just popular. You had to pass the test. The control yuan was an independent body to monitor government corruption, like an independent auditor with real teeth.
He was trying to blend Western democracy with traditional Chinese strengths. That's actually really innovative.
It is. And the third principle, livelihood.
Mention.
This is the most debated one. It covered social welfare. The communists interpret this as socialism. But Sun was actually heavily influenced by an American economist named Henry George, who advocated for a land value tax. Sun wanted to prevent massive wealth inequality, but he wasn't calling for the abolition of private property.
So nationalism, democracy, livelihood, a solid platform. But he never really got to see it fully implemented, did he?
No, he didn't. In 1924, he traveled north to Beijing. He was trying one last time to negotiate national unity with the warlords peacefully. But he was exhausted.
He fell ill on the trip.
He did. And for decades, the official story was that he had liver cancer.
But the notes say there was a plot twist in 2016.
Yes, a rediscovery of the original autopsy report by an American pathologist. It turns out it wasn't liver cancer initially, it was gallbladder cancer that had metastasized to the liver.
A small medical detail, but it speaks to how much of his life was sort of mythologized.
He died on March 12, 1925. He was only 58 years old. His last words were reportedly, "Peace, struggle, save China."
And even in death, things got weird.
Hmm.
The Soviets sent a glass coffin, right? Like the one they used for Lenin.
They did. They wanted to turn him into a Leninist-style saint preserved for eternity. But the family rejected the crystal coffin. Apparently the quality wasn't great, and they found the idea unsuitable.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Exactly. His body was eventually buried in a massive imperial-style mausoleum in Nanjing. You can still visit it today. It's huge.
But once he was dead, the glue holding the KMT and the communists together dissolved instantly.
Almost immediately, the United Front collapsed. Chiang Kai-shek took control of the military and the KMT. He turned on the communists in 1927 in a bloody purge. The Civil War began.
And this is where the fight for Sun's legacy gets intense, because both sides claimed him. They both said, "We are the true heirs of Sun Yat-sen."
Chiang Kai-shek solidified his claim by marrying Sun Mai-ling Sun's sister-in-law, so he became family. He elevated Sun to a godlike status in the Republic of China, emphasizing nationalism and democracy.
But the communists didn't let him go either.
No. And here's the family tragedy. Sun's widow, Sun Chengling, actually sided with the communists. She felt Chiang Kai-shek had betrayed Sun's ideals. She stayed on the mainland and eventually became the vice president of the People's Republic of China.
That is a family dinner I would not want to attend. One sister married to Chiang Kai-shek, the other the widow of Sun, standing on opposite sides of a civil war.
It perfectly illustrates the fracture of the nation. The communists reinterpreted Sun's three principles. They focused on livelihood and his policy of allying with Russia and helping the peasants.
So today, if you go to Taiwan, he's the father of the nation. If you go to Beijing, he's the forerunner.
And in Tiananmen Square, on major holidays, huge portraits of Sun Yat-sen are displayed. He's the one historical figure that both sides can agree to honor.
So coming back to our original mission, how did the professional exile become the national icon? How did the guy who failed so many times become the one success story everyone agrees on?
I think the key is to look at Sun as a bridge.
A bridge.
Yes, he was a bridge between ancient China and the modern world. He started by smashing an idol and ended by designing a constitution. But he was also a bridge between East and West. He was educated in Hawaii, he wore Western suits, but he fought for Chinese dignity.
And maybe, most importantly, a bridge between the different factions of China itself.
Exactly. Even though he failed militarily and politically over and over again, he never defeated the warlords, he never saw a unified China. His image became the only thing strong enough to hold the concept of China together.
It's the persistence, isn't it?
That's what sticks with me. The image of him reading about his own revolution in a newspaper in Denver. It wasn't his military genius that won. It was his relentless traveling, speaking, and fundraising. He just kept the idea alive when the reality was falling apart.
There's a provocative thought to end on here. Sun left a will that was recited in schools for decades, right?
Yes. It ends with the phrase, "The revolution is not yet effective. All my comrades must continue to work hard."
The revolution is not yet effective. In a way, both Taiwan and the mainland are still arguing over who is effectively finishing Sun's work.
And as long as that argument continues, Sun Yat-sen remains the most important common ground they have left. He's the only person both sides can talk about without arguing.
So next time you see that statue, whether it's in Taipei, Beijing, or even a Chinatown somewhere, don't just see the stiff statesman. See the kid smashing the idol, the guy hiding in the secret tunnel, and the traveler in the train station trying to talk the world into believing in a new China.
Well said.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.